Welcome back to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in Russia in the past 24 hours. The biggest strategic development is the removal of Yabloko from Russia's parliamentary election. The Supreme Court barred the country's only officially registered anti-war party after a challenge from the nationalist Rodina party. Yabloko leader Nikolai Rybakov rejected the allegations, promised an appeal, and said the decision denied dialogue to Russians asking uncomfortable questions about the war. That ruling matters because Yabloko had started to show modest but politically meaningful momentum. Independent reporting put its support near 6%, potentially enough to cross the parliamentary threshold. Hundreds of supporters gathered outside the court despite wartime repression. The Kremlin's precise motive can't be established from public evidence. But the signal is clear. Even limited electoral organization around a ceasefire can trigger institutional containment. The immediate effect is a narrower political map heading into September. Russian authorities have already made public opposition costly through censorship, prosecution, and pressure on independent media. Removing Yabloko also removes a legal channel for measuring anti-war sentiment. That gives the state more control over the outcome, while leaving it with less reliable information about how much private frustration is building underneath the managed system. That domestic closure is arriving as the war reaches deeper into civilian and commercial life on both sides. Russia's overnight attack killed civilians in Zaporizhzhia and the Dnipropetrovsk region, while strikes caused fires and damage in Kyiv. Moscow described logistics hubs, drone components, electronic warfare equipment, and defense-related steel production as its targets. Ukrainian officials emphasized homes, civilian deaths, injuries, and damage near a children's hospital. The strategic issue is the expanding overlap between commercial infrastructure and military logistics. Parcel networks, warehouses, heavy industry, and transport centers can all support a wartime economy while still serving millions of civilians. Russia benefits from treating broad categories of commerce as military enabling. Ukraine benefits from exposing the civilian cost of that approach. Western support plans now have to account for air defense, industrial dispersal, and continuity across ordinary logistics systems, not only obvious military sites. Ukraine is imposing a version of that pressure inside Russia. Drones reached Voronezh, where one person was killed, and falling debris ignited two large warehouse fires. The attack continued a campaign against Russian oil, defense, and distribution capacity far behind the front. These strikes won't decide the war on their own, but they can raise insurance costs, disrupt inventory, complicate transport, and puncture the expectation that rear areas remain insulated. There's also a North Korea dimension that now connects European air defense to Asian security. Ukrainian officials alleged that North Korean ballistic missiles were used in the latest Russian barrage. That specific claim still needs independent verification. The broader concern is credible. Repeated combat use can give Pyongyang data on missile reliability, penetration, signatures, and interception against a defended target set. Russia gains additional inventory, while North Korea gains a wartime test environment. That exchange means debris recovered in Ukraine and data from attempted interceptions should be shared quickly with South Korea and Japan. Allied planners need verified technical findings more than inflated public estimates. Evidence of corrected guidance, manufacturing changes, or Russian technical support would reveal much more than another unsupported claim about future troop numbers. Russia's pressure campaign is also changing NATO behavior along the northeastern flank. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia have increased security around gas terminals, storage sites, dams, power links, and a planned nuclear facility. Regional officials fear Moscow could stage an attack with Ukrainian-made drones to create uncertainty about attribution and split the alliance over how to respond. No public evidence proves that such an operation has been approved, and Moscow calls the warnings scare stories. The preparations still expose an alliance vulnerability. A relatively limited incident could create political chaos if members disagree over who was responsible or whether collective action is justified. Infrastructure protection therefore has to come with prearranged standards for evidence, public messaging, and consultation. Waiting until an unexplained drone lands near a power plant would be a rough time to write the playbook. The accountability track moved as well. Former Ukrainian detainees described beatings, electric shocks, sexual violence, starvation, and prolonged isolation in Russian custody. United Nations monitoring found that more than 95% of interviewed Ukrainian prisoners of war reported torture or ill treatment. It also documented executions at the start of captivity and deaths in custody. Russia rejected the accusations and alleged abuse of Russian prisoners in Ukrainian hands. The United Nations has documented mistreatment by Ukraine, but described it as occurring on a fundamentally different scale. Public testimony by Leni Umerova and Juan Alberto Levia Garcia increases pressure for access and future prosecutions. It also highlights the limits of international leverage when monitors can't freely inspect detention sites. Documentation may shape accountability later, while offering little immediate protection to people still held. Finally, Turkey is testing a narrow maritime off-ramp in the Black Sea. A Turkish government source said Ankara was discussing a mechanism with Russia and Ukraine to prevent attacks on commercial vessels, although no rules or geographic limits have been agreed. Russian messaging assigns Ukraine the role of maritime spoiler and presents Moscow as a participant in safety talks. The proposal becomes meaningful only if Ankara and Kyiv confirm it directly, and the parties establish a credible incident process. Until then, it's diplomatic signaling with useful potential. The larger Russian picture today is a system tightening at home, expanding the definition of legitimate targets abroad, and preparing to exploit ambiguity around alliance infrastructure. Each piece raises the cost of misreading Moscow's intentions, and each makes verified evidence more valuable than rhetoric. You've made it through another episode. Go do something kind, read something inconvenient, and keep a close eye on anyone who says they alone can save the country. The written brief is at restrictedhandling.substack.com.